Hello and welcome to a new UiPath demo. Starting with 2019.4, Git was introduced in UiPath as a version control tool among TFS and SVN. Let's start by creating a new project and then initializing a remote repo with it. Let's make it really simple by printing out the text from a variable in the output pane. We'll also initialize the variable with the text hello. Now, let's go to the team page, which now contains a new section dedicated to Git. In order to do so, we'll navigate to the Start button, or, even easier, use the Show Team Page button in the Project tab. We'll now create a new local Git repository, and in order to do so, we have to choose Git init and select the folder of the project we want to start tracking. We're then prompted to perform an initial commit. As all the project files are already selected, we only have to add a commit message. Initial commit. Choosing commit here will update our local repository only, while choosing commit and push will update a remote repository as well. As we now want to initialize a remote repo as well, we'll go with commit and push. A prompt to add a new remote repository is now displayed. As a next step, we'll use GitHub to create a new remote repo for our project. We'll give it the same name as our local folder. Copy the repo URL and use it for our project. For clarity, we'll give it the same name as the local folder and the remote repo. Now let's log in so that we can access the remote repo. Going back to GitHub, we have to refresh the page to see that our files are now there as well. As you can see, the files in the Project Tree tab received a mark, which means they're connected to a repository. Also, the Show Team Page button turned green as an indicator of the fact. As by default, we only have the master branch. We have to create another branch to work in. In order to do that, we need to go to Manage Branches and create a new branch. To start working in the new branch, we have to check out the branch first. Let's push the new branch to the remote. As you can see, the new branch is now on the remote as well. Now that we have everything aligned, we'll create a working branch. To do so, we'll start making several changes to our project. Firstly, we'll remove the Excel Activities package. Secondly, we'll add a new package to our project, UiPath PDF Activities Package. After deleting the write line activity and using a message box activity instead, we'll also change the variable text to Hello World. Let's save our changes. As you can see, as soon as we hit the Save button, the icon of the changed file switched to a little pencil, which means it differs from the version that we last committed. Suppose our changes were a lot more complex and we want to see exactly what those changes are before committing them. If we go to Show Changes, the updates since the last commit are visible in a Workflow diff window. In the top section of the screen, we can easily see what was added, deleted, or modified in our workflow. We can also navigate between the changes using the Previous and Next buttons. The lower section of the screen will display what the changes are for modified elements. For JSON files, there is only one section where we can see the before and after side by side, compared by line. We are all set, so we can close this window and proceed to commit the changes to the local repo. Keep in mind that it is important to add descriptive commit messages. Our changes are over in the dev branch, but we now have to merge it into master. To do so, we can easily move to the master branch by checking it out and then right-clicking the dev branch and selecting merge. What will this do? It will merge the selected branch dev into the current one, master. We're going to use the push, so merging the branches is also reflected in the remote repo. As you can see, the master branch now contains our latest changes. Here, we have another machine that we're accessing through Windows RDP. Suppose this is someone else's laptop, and now they also want to open this project and start working on it. Having Studio running on the remote machine, we'll choose Clone Repository and provide a folder path where the files from the remote will be copied to, as well as the URL of the remote repo we are copying. We'll now type the path for an empty folder. As our file structure does not have the project JSON right inside the first folder of the hierarchy, we have to point out to where it is found. All set. We can now continue working on this project from our second machine. Right now, we are in the master branch, so I'll now switch to the dev branch. Let's refine several details within the main workflow. We'll have to duplicate the message box activity, save the changes, and be aware about the file icon, which switched to indicate our action. Note that we're not able to inspect the changes that took place, as we did earlier. Since we're not happy with the duplicate message box, we will revert it by choosing Undo from the right-click menu. Note that in case you have multiple files which were modified, you can leave selected just the ones that you want to revert and then press the Undo button. Now we'll be changing the workflow to set the variable text with an assign activity before the message box, instead of providing a default value in the variable declaration. To do so, we'll commit the change to the local repo. This is now done, and we have to merge the dev changes into master, just like before. We also have to use the push so that our changes are sent to the remote repo. Switching back to GitHub, you can see that the dev commit ended up in the master remote branch. Now we want to bring the updated project, which contains the changes done on the other machine, the one that we accessed through RDP, to our locally running instance of Studio. First things first, we'll have to go back to the project by clicking Pull, Rebase. This action retrieved the latest version from the remote repository, and we now have the version that we've worked on the other machine. If we want to see all the changes that took place until now on a certain file, we can use the Show History feature. Doing so, there will be displayed a log which contains all known versions of the file. Basically, each line represents a commit that involved changes in our file. We can also see where the change was committed, the author, the commit message, as well as the commit short hash. Double-clicking one of the versions will open a diff tool, which helps us visualize all the changes that occurred to our file in that respective commit. Just like the Show Changes feature, this helps us see what was added, deleted, or removed in our workflow. Moreover, we can compare any two versions by first selecting them with Ctrl+click and then choosing Compare Selected. We can also compare two separate files, as there is also an option for it. Let's make a copy of the main XAML file. We'll add an additional message box activity at the end of the copy we made. If we right-click the first file we want to compare, choose Select for Compare, and then the second one and choose Compare with Selected, we're once again presented with the Workflow diff tool. This comparison can be performed between any two files of the same type, keeping in mind that on the left-hand side will be the first file and on the right-hand side will be the second one. We'll now close the current project and create a new Studio project. This new project is not currently linked to any repo. If we want to copy it to a source control connected folder, we can easily do that using the Copy to Git feature on the team page. Firstly, it tells us that the current project will be closed. In this case, we'll choose Continue and then point out to a source control connected folder. We'll have to select the folder of the project we were working on earlier. As we are asked whether we want to open the project from the new location instead, we choose Yes. A prompt to commit the new files appears, so we choose Commit and Push. Switching over to GitHub, we can see that our new project was added here as well. As a final step, if we want to disconnect the current project from source control, we can simply choose Disconnect. Please keep in mind that doing so will delete the local repository from the disk. And that was all for today. Thank you for watching.